Just going to start kicking things off with a little bit of housekeeping. Any questions as we're going through, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A in the chat section here. Be more than happy to try and answer them as we're going, or we will have a Q&A session at the end where we can answer some of those for you as well if we don't get time as we drop through these slides. But just to quickly cover off the agenda a little bit here for you all, we're going to start off just with setting the scene a little bit, introduction to Microsoft 365 licensing, followed up by some recommended best practices, a few ways you can make sure you're getting the most out of your existing Microsoft 365 licenses, and then on to some recent developments and that have come from Microsoft and some recent updates and things like that as a part of that section. But as it says at the bottom there, Q&A session at the end, but feel free to drop them in the chat and the Q&A as we're going through, and I will do my best to pick those up for you as we go. So kicking things off then with that introduction to Microsoft 365 licensing, and just to kind of set the scene a little bit here for you. So I'm going to start off just by going over the actual kind of Microsoft 365 licensing that exists, and you'll no doubt fall somewhere on the chart here in terms of the licensing that you have as a business today. And sometimes it's a mix and match of these licenses, so not everybody falls into just one bucket. Some people have their licensing spread across multiples in here. But to go through the different segments as we see them here, starts off at the top with your consumer licensing for home purposes. This would be the personal licensing you have at home. Perhaps you share at home with your, wife, husband, and children, etc. And that's very much just the idea being of it's your personal licensing and your family licensing. Now, some businesses historically have ended up on that licensing, and it's not right that they do that, as they should be as a operational business working from the SMB and licensing and upwards really that we'll see on the screen here. So the focus today for us will be on the SMB licensing as we go through this, and to kind of talk about those pieces. Now it comes in kind of 3 different flavors here, shall we call it, with Business Basic, Business Standard and Business Premium, and they kind of go up tiers in terms of features and functionality from the basic to the point of premium. These are designed for small and medium businesses of the UK, which means they are capped at 300 users. Now that can be any mix and match of those, so like 100 basic, 100 standard and 100 premium, but you can't have more than 300 of those as a collective business. And the reason for that is because Microsoft provides some very good features and functionality there that are aimed at the SMB market, and they basically don't want enterprise businesses taking advantage of those features at the discounted rates, etc., that SMBs are entitled to. Next up, you have the enterprise licensing, which is for businesses of over 300 users, and these bring in what's known as your E1, E3 and E5 style licensing. And again, these are increased feature and functionality in certain areas, and some of them are less feature and functionality rich than what you see for the SMB market. But the idea being is these are for the larger enterprises, and as such have some of the features and functions that they would expect to see, need and utilize as part of their day-to-day. As a part of that, there is also something that's known as first line licensing, which is that F1 and that F3 section that you see on there. And these are bespoke licenses that are made for businesses which run, let's say, staff that are not desk bound all day long. So that would be things like, you can imagine it being a paramedic, a firefighter, etc., that aren't going to be desk bound all day. Maybe a store worker, for example, shopfront worker, or even a warehouse worker, for example, where they'll need to log on, maybe send some emails, do a little bit of updating of an Excel spreadsheet, perhaps for stock takes, that sort of thing. And it's very light touch. They're not desk bound all day, and therefore, again, don't need the same features and functions as other users do. That leads us on to something known as educational licensing that exists in the world, which is, again, bespoke set of licensing, bespoke set of pricing with some free licensing that becomes available for educational institutions as well. There is also a structure on here for charity licensing, which you don't see on the screen, but charity licensing follows the same track as SMB and enterprise on the screen there, just again with a discounted rate, based on the fact that they are non-for-profit registered organisations, via a charity registration number and with Microsoft as part of a registration process. So that just sets the scene a little bit for all these licenses. There's a lot of information to take in there, and please don't panic that you don't know what all of these things are, because we're going to make some of it and the more important pieces of it for you a little bit clearer as we go through some of the slides today. So as I said, we would focus primarily today on the SMB SKUs, which is your Business Basic, Business Standard and Business Premium. So these are the 3 that we will talk about more than anything. We talk about these purely because most businesses that we'll work with will be in that SMB section, which is that up to 300 user scenario. So the free licenses that you see on the screen here are kind of created with almost some different use cases behind them in terms of how customers will use and operate these licenses day to day. So from the first one you've got on there, the Microsoft 365 Business Basic, it incorporates a lot of the core applications that people need. So from applications, you can think of that being, Microsoft Teams, your Word, your PowerPoint, your Excel, those sorts of things that people use day to day. So you get all of that included. You continue to get SharePoint, which is your cloud-based collaborative storage, and OneDrive, which is, again, cloud storage, but it is localized to you as an individual. So it's your own personal cloud storage. Imagine this being very similar to an iCloud style scenario on most modern mobile phones that people use from Apple. So that's looking at it from that perspective. You then get to move on there to what's known as business standard, and business standard again comes in with the very similar feature set. The primary difference here comes there from the fact that your applications, so again, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, these are now installed desktop applications on your device. So these are things that you can use whether you are online or offline. Now, if we flip back to Business Basic for a moment, Business Basic only comes with these available via your web browser. So in order to access Word and PowerPoint, you have to do it from your Google Chrome browser, your Firefox browser, whichever it is that you choose to use personally. So they have to be accessed via those browsers rather than them being installed applications on your laptop and desktop where you can click on the icon and it opens up PowerPoint, it opens up Word, etc. Now that comes with the benefits of if you're sat trying to work from a train, for example, or from a coffee shop, and you have a poor or no internet signal, you're not going to be able to access those web-based applications versus on a business standard license where they are installed applications, you would still be able to utilize them and make document edits and creation as a part of that because you can work in an offline environment with those installed applications. So it comes with some nice benefits there for individuals, especially remote workers or hybrid workers and things like that. It can be a lot more beneficial for them. And then it moves us on to what's known as the business premium license. And it's become known at Microsoft as what they call the hero SKU. And the reason for it being called the hero SKU is because it includes everything you see in business standard and business basic. But it goes even further with those 7 little boxes you see at the bottom there. And we are going to touch on each of these individually, but it's these particular component parts that bring advanced security, compliance, and device management aspects that make it a lot more of an interesting proposition and a lot more of an all-in-one style solution for SMBs in the UK. And it's probably the reason that it's more than anything the leading SKU at the moment that we're seeing partners want to drive and take up as a consequence of that. So why is it important? Why is the security and the compliancy aspect so important at the moment? And these are some of the statistics that were taken from a cybersecurity research report done by Microsoft recently. And as you'll see on the screen there, there's a lot of stats and statistics, but 94% of SMBs consider cybersecurity to be critical to their companies. So that's basically saying that people are becoming more and more aware of the requirement to have cybersecurity solutions in play. And the Microsoft 365 Business Premium license and some of the features that we'll touch on in the coming slide are kind of really, really important aspects of this in terms of securing businesses' data, endpoints, and so on and so forth. We've then got the 1 in 3. SMBs have been victims of a cyber attack. So again, significant numbers and significant rises there. And that's been for a number of reasons. And, one of the big pieces that came out of Microsoft's recent digital defense report as a part of that was the fact that we were seeing nation state actors start to target SMBs more prominently, purely because a lot of SMBs don't have the necessary cybersecurity tools in play, that they are easier targets than the large enterprises that we see making the headlines. Again, you can think here, Marks and Spencer's attacks of recent times, Harrods, Jaguar Land Rover, they're all flashy headlines, but it's the SMBs that get targeted in the largest possible volume. And again, these readily available digital defense reports, etc., from Microsoft highlight that in spades with the evidence to back that up. You've got on there as well, cyber attacks cost SMBs over $250,000 on average and can cost up to $7 million. And the reason those numbers sound, pie in the sky, and a lot of people will be like, oh, no, it would never cost me that much. They'll want tens of thousands of pounds off me to give me my data back, shall we say, from it being stolen. The piece that people often overlook in these scenarios is when it comes to other pieces and other aspects of this, such as lost future earnings because of damaged business reputation due to a cyber attack taking place. It's the fines that are leveraged on them for breaking compliancy rules, GDPR and the like, across not just the UK, but Europe and so on and so forth. So again, it's all these fines and that become leveraged on them. It's the damage to future earnings because of brand damage that comes from that, and it's the cost of them just trying to get their data back and trying to get the business back on a steady footing. And then we also have on there 80% intend to increase their cybersecurity spending. So SMBs are registering this, and other SMBs are now starting to make themselves that difficult target. So when we talked about those nation state actors a few moments ago, those nation-backed entities that are targeting SMBs around the UK, we're seeing now a scenario where the SMBs start to fund themselves properly in cybersecurity spending, and as a consequence, make themselves a more difficult target for them nation state actors to impress on. So I said we'd mention some of the features in Business Premium that help in terms of this security posture, and we're just going to really lightly touch on these now. We're not going to any kind of depth of features and functionality, shall we say, because it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole with these advanced sorts of cybersecurity technologies. But just to highlight what they are and kind of what the purposes are for them here. First up, we have something that's known as Microsoft Entra ID Plan 1. At the moment, I'm sure many of you on the call will have be utilising what's known as MFA, multi-factor authentication, for your users. So you log in and it will perhaps maybe text you a code or send you a code on an application and say, can you confirm it's you? Many of you will have seen that sort of thing on your banking applications and things for a number of years now. That's what's known as multi-factor authentication. So not only do I provide my username and password, I also have to perform a second piece of identity as well, which can usually be like a 6-digit code or a 2-digit code from an application, as we mentioned. And that's utilising what's known as MFA. It's Entra ID Plan 1 that brings MFA to the table, and some more advanced features around that as well, such as dictating when you do and don't have to use MFA. It's been a prime one of those. Also comes with other features like the ability to reset your own password rather than requiring an administrator to do that type of work for you. And there's other such things around a solution of something that's known as shadow IT, etc., with cloud app discovery that it brings to the forefront. And we have got some scenarios coming up on all of this as well. So we'll touch on that in a little bit more depth and give you some scenarios and how these particular features that we'll talk about then plug the gap in terms of that particular scenario as we go through. Next up, we've got Microsoft Intune. Intune is all around managing the devices. So, you as an employer give maybe, 10, 15 laptops out to your different staff members, and then there's maybe a mobile phone on top of that as well. And then eventually maybe they get tablets or something like an iPad. Microsoft Intune allows you to manage all of those devices. So if they, God forbid, leave the laptop or leave the iPad sat on a train somewhere, you have the ability to be able to remote wipe that device or ensure it's locked and secured. So it's in such a way that when your employee can get back to that device, you'll know full well that the data that was on that device has remained safe and secure, and there isn't any risks of a data leakage as a part of that. And again, that works across multi-platform, so it will work on Macs, Windows, Android devices, iPads with the iOS and anything else in between. So it's very, very multi-purpose from that perspective, offering a lot of protection, but also a lot of management from the perspective of we can make sure devices are updated on a regular basis. We can make sure that if people are bringing their own devices, so something known as BYOD, bring your own device, if people are bringing their own devices in as well, that your data on them personal devices can remain protected. And in the eventuality they leave the business, that data can be wiped from those devices, but only your data and not anything else, as the scenario coming up will show you. We then have Microsoft Defender for Business sat in here as well. This is very much like a traditional antivirus solution. So imagine you've bought your laptop from Currys and it comes pre-installed with that good old Norton 360. It's like that, but tenfold in terms of the capabilities and the features and functions that come with that. And this is what's known as EDR, endpoint detect and response. This would be very similar to things such as CrowdStrike that's out there. They do a product like this, and sort of Fortinet, to name another one. So again, it's those sorts of products that sit within this area. Microsoft Defender for Business is included in Business Premium and brings these same sorts of capabilities. And again, we'll touch on what those capabilities are a little bit more shortly. We then have what's known as Microsoft Defender for Office 365. Now, this is all around like an email protection solution. A lot of people think Outlook comes with email protection built into it. Very much isn't the case. And it's important that people understand that. It comes with a very limited set of like spam features built into it. This is not going to stop people with phishing attempts, spear phishing attempts, and all of the other very, very inventive ways that they come up with trying to target people via email for a cyber attack. Now, it goes beyond just a traditional email security solution here, though, and we start introducing the ability to bring protection into your collaboration tools. So when we say that, that's like people trying to target you via Microsoft Teams. So an external party communicates with you through Teams, trying to get you to log into a fake system so that they can steal your username and password and target your systems, or sell them on to somebody else who intends to target your systems. And again, offering that protection through Teams, OneDrive and SharePoint, from clicking on links, opening attachments, and so on and so forth. And again, we'll touch on that a little bit more with one of the scenarios shortly. And then last but not least on here, it's probably the most talked about products for me at the moment when it comes to Business Premium and Microsoft in general, and that's Microsoft Purview. So Microsoft Purview is a full family of products that's available, and it's all centered around protecting your data. So that's protecting the data, whether it sits on your laptop, whether it's sat in your OneDrive storage, or God forbid, if it's a scenario where some of that data ends up being saved onto a little memory stick or an external hard drive and gets left on the train, the data can remain encrypted and protected even in those scenarios using the Purview family of products. So very, very attractive set of products for regulated industries, and brings a lot of capabilities and functionality for them as a part of that. And as we touch on the scenarios coming up, we'll give you just one instance of the capabilities of Microsoft Purview as we touch on it. So first up, one of the challenges and the solution around this here. So we've got a fictitious company which has been created for all of these scenarios as we discuss them. So we'll start off on the left with the challenge and then move on to the right where you see in the solution here on the slides. So first up with the challenge here, we have Northwind traders. They have employees that need to access their work data as they are working remotely. So not anything too dissimilar from how most businesses in the UK work today now. So, however, they are aware that bad actors have been trying to gain access to their work information by trying to steal passwords, trying to gain access to the work data from basically anywhere in the world. So they're trying to potentially steal usernames and passwords, but them as a user that are trying to attack them could again be sat elsewhere in Europe, elsewhere in South America, North America, wherever in the world they may be. So in this scenario, we're going to use the products that we discussed on the previous slide, which was Entra ID, again, a piece of the Business Premium license. And it's going to use a piece of that product that's known as conditional access. So that's a feature within that Entra ID family of products. And what conditional access basically does is utilizing MFA that we went through a few moments ago, multi-factor authentication. The conditional access policies basically dictate when you do and do not have to use MFA. So if you was logging into your banking app, for instance, a lot of people have to MFA every time they log in. It's your money, it's important, it needs to stay secure. In the instance of this, and this working scenario with Northwind traders, they may have the scenario here where if they have people from other places in the world, so people from outside of the UK trying to log into their systems, they always have to use MFA and prove they are who they say they are. As a consequence of that, it's potentially shuttering off up to 99% of attacks that take place from outside of the UK for them as a business, which, kind of takes off a huge portion of potential attack vectors that could come in and try and steal their data, steal their usernames and passwords as a consequence of that. So again, the username and the password may get stolen, but they can't get in because they have to MFA and they don't hold the mobile phone with the MFA number on it, the application, whatever that type of MFA may be that is set up for them as a business. So conditional access really powerful set of tools here. It doesn't just have to be, it can make you MFA if you're somewhere else in the world. It may be a situation where they require the multi-factor authentication, for instance, if they are an administrator, so somebody with a lot of administrative rights and usage. That can be another scenario where you'll maybe want somebody to use multi-factor authentication every single time they log in. So powerful set of tools. Again, there is other features and functionality that it will complete as well for you that we discussed before, such as self-service password resets and so on and so forth. Again, adding to that value that this product can supply for you. So next up on the list, we had Microsoft Intune. So Microsoft Intune, again, really, really popular set of products at the moment for people that are trying to manage devices, but also manage multiple types of devices across their IT estate, shall we call it. And again, we've got a challenge and a solution here that we're going to go through as a part of the Intune aspect. So a Northwind Traders marketing manager is using her personal device to check the company email and receive a confidential business plan. So she accidentally saves it to her. She accidentally takes that confidential business plan and tries to save it to the personal storage on that mobile phone. So I've got the sales plan for my business for the next 18 months, 12 months, and I have just taken it from my email and saved it in the personal storage on my phone. I've put it maybe in a Dropbox of my own or on the storage of my mobile device, for instance. That data has now left the corporate framework, the corporate area, and can now be accessed by anybody. It's pretty much open game that if this device was in any way, shape or form compromised, they could potentially access your sales plan. Or it may be a case of that document gets shared externally by mistake because it isn't any in your corporate frame, your corporate, let's say, locked area any longer. And, other scenarios are for this that, they may leave the business and take that sales plan with them and give it to a competitor. There's various different scenarios here where that data could potentially leak. And in order to stop that, you can use products like Intune that have something known as app protection policies built into them. And what these app protection policies basically do is if I took that document from my Outlook, so email, that business plan comes in again. However, this time, because we've got an app protection policy in place, when I try to save it to that personal storage, it blocks me from doing that. When I go to try and save it to my personal Dropbox or Google Drive account or iCloud storage or whatever it may be, it's blocking me from doing any of that sort of activity. And that's because of the app protection policy that's in place on that. It won't let you save it outside of that little picket fence that goes around all of your corporate data. As you'll see on there, it will allow me to save it into my work business OneDrive. I can do that with no problem. I could save it into my SharePoint again. Absolutely no problem with doing that. What it doesn't want you to do is take it out of that secure environment that you have in there, that corporate framework that has been created. So again, it's stopping a data leak and stopping a potential point in time where that data could be taken away and accessed by potentially anybody outside of your device. So, really important feature that's built into them there. And again, it just stops a data leak, stops the data breach, stops you having to report yourself for these data breaches taking place as and when they do. So brilliant set of tools there. Intune itself can do a lot more than that, though. As we were discussing earlier, it will have the ability to support with setting up new devices so you can onboard new starters faster, the ability to force new applications. If you go to market with a new solution, let's say, I don't know, for instance, one of the more popular ones, maybe like a Mondays, for example, like a project management style tool, you can launch that tool and automatically install it onto all of your users' devices, in a matter of minutes. It's really, really straightforward to be able to do that utilizing these sorts of tools. So again, not just a protection aspect, it's also got the management, the onboarding and the simplification aspect as well to make the IT estate easier for people to use, engage with and onboard and unboard, retire devices as users leave the business. Amazing. Just a reminder to people, you can drop any questions you have in the Q&A in the chat, so do feel free to do that as we are going through, won't you? But next up, we have another security tool, which is known as Defender for Office 365. And this is going to go through exactly what a phishing email is and how this would stop a potential phishing attack from taking place with your business. So, Northwind Traders employees received an email with a link to a secure document. Now, they believe this to be from a well-known and reliable source, is where it's come from. So, they open the email, they enter their login credentials to view it, but it doesn't load. Nothing happens when they put their credentials in. Anyways, they think no more about it, push that email to one side and carry on about their working day, thinking we'll come back to that later. Now, unbeknown to them, in them opening this email they thought was absolutely harmless, typing in that username and password, they have handed over their employee credentials to a potential attacker. So as a consequence of that, the attacker now has your stolen credentials and can now potentially access sensitive company data as a consequence of that. Or that username and password end up somewhere on the dark web and sold to the highest bidder, in which case somebody else will take that away and they will perform the malicious action against you as a business. So in this scenario, the products were mentioned here, Defender for Office 365, which is built into the Microsoft Business Premium license. In this scenario, Defender for Office 365 would basically utilize a couple of different aspects here in order to protect from that. Now, there would have been the initial scan, which in 99% of circumstances would have blocked this email from coming in the first place. So the user wouldn't have even seen it to press on any link. However, in the remote chance that it does come through there and that email ends up in the user's inbox, as soon as the user clicked on the link to open it up, to type their credentials in, it would have utilized a piece of the product which is known as Safe Links. And what Safe Links basically does is works with a time of click URL protection. And what that basically means is every single time you press on a link, it opens it up, checks the link's exactly what it says it is, and then decides yes or no whether you can access that link. So whether it be a link you've pressed on 1,000 times before, or if it's the first time you're pressing on it, it's going to check that link is sending you to where you believe it should be sending you to. So if that link was supposed to be like a Microsoft web page, for instance, and you'd clicked on it and it took you to a potentially third-party one that was faking a Microsoft web page, it would pick up on all of that. It would knock it back to you and say, unfortunately, you can't access this website. You would see a banner very similar to the red screen that you see on there in that small orange box. And it would provide you that to say, unfortunately, this is malicious. We're not going to let you proceed onto this particular link unless you go speak to an administrator that will override us. So protecting you every single time you do it. Now, it's important when we say it's protecting you every time you press that link, because what has been known to happen is they'll send a link the first time, you press on it, the link's fine, takes you to exactly where it says it should. What they do is over the weekend, they then switch that link out and send it to a different location, changing the web page perhaps even in the background. Now all of a sudden it's a malicious web page that's got malicious intent to steal your usernames and passwords. So some solutions will only check it once. With time of click protection, it checks it every single time to make sure that link on that web page hasn't been changed during the period of time since you last pressed it. So really important feature there. As it says in the bottom right hand corner there, it also does this very same check for any attachments that you receive from your emails. Also comes with all the usual anti-spoofing, so it's looking for people doing kind of like impersonation style attacks as well. And then you've obviously got at the bottom there as well AI powered aspects of this email defense. So it's 99.995% of attacker intent detection and accuracy when it comes to this filter. So there's not much that gets through. When it does get through, there is additional solutions in there to protect you, such as safe links, such as the safe attachments aspect, etc. that sit within there. So it's almost got kind of a fail safe in the eventuality that the filters don't pick up on this, which is very little that they don't pick up on. So next up there for you, we have got the pair view aspect. And as I said on one of the previous slides, pair view is probably the most talked about aspect of Business Premium and any of the licensing when it comes to Microsoft for me at the moment. Especially with the whole generative AI piece and how this can integrate into solutions such as Microsoft Copilot, etc. So challenge in this scenario, again, our fictitious company of Northwind Traders, they are sometimes protecting their documents with a password. I'm sure many of you have seen that before. Traditional password that's you click on a document, a little text box comes up, you put your password in, you can access your Excel spreadsheet, for example. So they're using these passwords to protect and guard company information, such as sales plans, marketing plans, whatever it may be for the business over the coming 12 months. However, as it says, these security measures are used inconsistently, and many of the confidential documents are kind of emailed around, saved on USB sticks, and they kind of, sometimes have no protection on them at all, or sometimes there is protection there. And again, saved on hard drives, saved on USB sticks, saved in the cloud. Again, it's very inconsistent, and it isn't really a solid company policy that's enforced. So we've got a scenario here where employee, that you'll see there at the top left in that small dark blue dot, basically accesses a sensitive company file. Let's say, for instance, this is the 12-month sales plan for the business. They download that folder, that file, and they save it on a little USB stick that they have on their keys, put it in their pocket, leave the business. They go home, plug that into the laptop, access the whole sales plan on their own personal laptop at home. During that time, they've left the business, handed their notice in, told them they won't be back in on Monday, but they've walked out the door with a, kind of a highly confidential sales plan for the business for the coming 12 months. So that data has been taken outside, stolen, and can now be accessed potentially by somebody with malicious intent, or even a competitor in another example. Again, I suppose you would class that as malicious intent as well, wouldn't you? So they've took that documentation away with them. Now, if we move to the solution here, Pairview being a family of products, not just a single product, but one of the aspects of that family of products is something that's known as information protection. And that comes with something that's known as labels, or sensitivity labels, as they're often known. And what a sensitivity label basically does is when a user goes in and creates a document, it will tell them that they can't save the document until they apply a label against it. And the label is basically dictating what level of security is applied to that document. But again, they can't save the document and do anything with it until they give it some degree of a label. So some people create a document and put like a public label on it because it's a document which is not sensitive in any way, shape or form. Plan is we can potentially give that to a customer and they're going to walk away and use that as well. It may be that the document, as in our sales plan here, is highly confidential. And as a consequence of that, we want to make sure that that document is protected and encrypted. So we could mark that up as being like highly confidential, for instance, and that means only certain individuals in the business would be able to access it, on top of only certain people outside of the business would be able to access it also. So our scenario here, this Northwind Traders employee repeats the same process, accesses that sensitive file, saves it onto their USB stick, takes the USB stick home and plugs it into their personal laptop. But because we've applied that highly confidential label on it, when they do get home, plug it into that personal laptop and try to open it up, it will no longer open for them. It's the encryption on that document is saying you don't have the username and password anymore, so you don't have your login credentials for your Microsoft environment to be able to log in and access that information. So therefore, you're no longer in the corporate address book, and as a consequence of that, you can't access this document. So it's protecting it now. And if they sent it to a colleague at their new business, they wouldn't be able to access it either. It basically just becomes a paperweight at that point for them, because the document itself is a useless ornament unless you have corporate login credentials for, in this instance, Northwind Traders. So only their employees could access those documents. Again, really powerful set of features and functions there. This also builds on top of another feature and function which is similar, which is called data loss prevention. And this can kind of create scenarios where it will automatically apply encryption to documents based on the information that you input. So if you have people creating documents with like, let's say, for instance, NHS numbers, it may be business addresses, company addresses, customer addresses, it could be credit card numbers. It's another prime example, account numbers, sort codes. It can detect that information being inputted and the format of that information, and then automatically encrypt and protect those documents to make sure that they don't leave the business. So in other words, stopping it from ever being emailed out to, or stopping it from ever being saved on that USB stick in the first place. So again, there's even further features and functionality here that's available within Business Premium and within the Pairview family of products to support with that, on top of a whole host of other features that are really, really powerful inside of Pairview to protect your data from, legal perspectives, HR perspectives, and everything else in between. And then last but not least, we have a scenario here for Defender for Endpoint. In the interest of time, I'm not going to massively focus on the Defender for Endpoint scenario that we have here. And I'm going to jump us to the next slide, really, so we can discuss Defender for Business in a little bit more depth on what it actually is and how it actually works a little bit, to be fair. So if I jump you onto this slide here, which is the Defender for Business slide that we've got, and basically Defender for Business follows these 4 steps really in terms of how it works and how it operates. So as I said on my earlier slide, Defender for Business is your endpoint protection solution. So it's very much aimed around protecting the laptop that your user has at home, at their work office, wherever that may be. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And it protects it from these 4 ways, and it goes beyond a traditional antivirus style solution and moves more into the world of protecting the device, but also acting in the event that something happens and taking that remediative action steps that need to be done. So we hit the identify piece on the left hand side. So you imagine your user's laptop is, let's say for instance, it's a hotel. Prime example, building, home, whatever you want it to be, it's a building. When we have the identify aspect of Defender for Business, what that's doing is it's looking for vulnerabilities inside of the business. So when we say looking at vulnerabilities, you can look at this from the perspective of it's walking around the building, checking that there's no holes in the brickwork, making sure that there's windows and doors where they should be. It's doing those sorts of checks to make sure there's no potential gaps to get in from. You then have the protect piece, which is next up. Protect is what's known as the attack surface reduction and the next generation protection. So this piece here would be making sure that the windows and the doors are locked. The locks are there. We know who has keys for the locks, that sort of scenario. So this is basically providing the front door protection, making sure you don't have spyware and other potentially malicious attack software trying to come in through that front door, through those windows, etc. We then move on to what's known as your detect and response aspect. And this is where it becomes what's known as a EDR solution, endpoint detection and response. So this is where somebody has unfortunately got through that front door, through the window, wherever it may be. This is the point in time where we are now starting to alert people that there is somebody in the system. There is unusual activity taking place. We believe it to be an intruder. So we're starting to alert people and we're starting to make a response plan around all of that as it goes. We then move on to the recovery aspect, which is where you have your investigation and the remediation aspect. So you can look at this from the perspective of, right, we've identified somebody in, we've alerted the authorities, your administrators, so that they know somebody is in your system. And then from this automated investigation and remediation perspective, we're now looking at it from, right, we've tracked where they've been through the building on the security cameras. So we know where they've been, what have they accessed, what have they taken, and we're taking remediative action in order to box them in or even get them out the system entirely. So we're going to start isolating particular users' computers so that they can't move around and gain access to other devices and other network systems that we have. And this is all doing this as a part of a single license, and it's all automated start to finish. So it's not any kind of human intervention required at this point. It is literally taking all these steps of actions automatically in order to check what's going on. If somebody gets in, where have they been? What have they done? Alerting the authorities and then boxing them in and potentially even kicking them out the system when and where possible as well, or at least isolating them to where they can do limited amounts of damage, if anything at all. So again, kind of a full roadmap there. On the screen, you'll probably see that NIST name on there as well. So that's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is in the US. And Microsoft are a really, really big partner of NIST. Like I say, it's a third party, kind of like government authority in the US, and Microsoft basically follow all of their security framework and guidelines around the NIST framework that kind of gets created, and kind of all of their aspects that come with that. They have a full what's known as CSF, which is like a voluntary framework for cybersecurity businesses to follow. And Microsoft again are kind of big partners that buy into that process, that framework, and kind of implement that within the security solutions that they create and go to market with. So we're being aware that that exists, and that's kind of the philosophy that they follow when it comes to cybersecurity. Some recommended best tips and practices for you all. So this is to look at your existing licenses, and there's a few things to touch on here, but we will try and make them quite quick because, again, I'm very conscious of the time for us here. Now, Microsoft Defender, we've already spoken about, so we won't delve into that too much, but be aware, if you are already on Business Premium, you'll have some of those features and functionality there already. And some of that feature and functionality, a very limited amount of it, is actually coming to some of the other SMB license SKUs in 2026. So a little bit of an insider there for you on what's to come. OneDrive, that's your personal cloud storage. Everything you put in there is localized to you. Tons of storage available in there. Make the most of it is what I would say to you. It's secure. It's based on all of Microsoft data centers that are in the UK, so your data doesn't leave the UK when you're using your OneDrive environments, etc. And again, it's there. It's to be used. It's free within every single one of the Microsoft 365 licenses, and I highly recommend that you use that for storing any of your documents in. So PDFs, PowerPoints, Excels, photos, whatever you want. Save it in OneDrive, the best place for it to be, especially if you're using third-party backup solutions, because you'll tend to find they all back up with OneDrive as well. We've also got on here Viva. Now, Viva is a brilliant family of products, and the main ones that people use are Viva Engage, which is almost like an internal LinkedIn, you can imagine it being, for you to use as a business for free, where you can do company updates. If you're doing a bake sale day for charity, you can announce it in there for everybody to see, and it bakes straight into people's Microsoft Teams environments, which means it's nice and easy for people to use and engage in that as well. Other pieces we've got on there, whiteboards, which again, really good for collaborating on, in a proactive session. You can, again, be on a Teams call, very similar to what we are now. We're on a webinar page, but again, it's very similar. You can drop up a whiteboard page and, you can have several people collaborating on a brainstorming session, live on a screen in front of you all. If you're lucky enough to have a touchscreen laptop, it makes it even easier, or an iPad or something, and you can literally be drawing straight onto the screen there for others to see in front of you. You then have bookings. Sure, many of you will have seen customers in the past, or even yourselves, have a link in their email where it says book time in with me, and you can click on it and book an appointment directly into their diary, shall we say, for instance. That's completely available within your Microsoft 365 Business Standard and Business Premium licenses. So that bookings link, again, straight into your emails. You can open it up, and people are able to book meetings with you live from that link. In terms of encouraging people to book meetings with you, making it easier for people rather than going, oh, I'm free at Tuesday at 10, are you free then? And that back and forth, again, it eliminates all of that for you. Also allows you to be able to set up reminder and follow-up emails automatically. So if you have a generic sales one, for instance, I can sit there and do an email beforehand that just says, reminder, you've got a meeting with James tomorrow. And then I could do a follow-up one. Thanks for meeting James at Impact. We'll follow up with more detail later, but just wanted to say thanks again for your time just now. And it'll automatically do all of that follow-up piece for you. You then have To-Do, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a to-do list that's, again, built into Outlook and various other Microsoft applications that you can access it from. And you can create to-do lists, and you can put the word I'm looking for. You can put alarms and reminders and things like that against those items on your to-do list, transfer them from day to day, and so on and so forth. But nice thing to do. You can also create Teams to-do lists as well for collaborating across multiple teams. And then Copilot Chat was something I wanted to mention as well for you all. So Microsoft have announced that Copilot Chat as a free version is available now in all of your applications. So you can interact actively with Copilot and ask it questions about the document that you're currently in. If I've got a PowerPoint presentation as we're in now in front of me, I could actively ask Copilot in the right hand side of my screen. It's just a little icon. What you see on the screen there in the top right hand side, you can press on that. You can actively engage with Copilot as an AI agent. Ask it to summarize the PowerPoint that you're looking at. Ask it if it could give you any recommendations on how you could improve it. Is there anything you could improve from maybe an accessibility perspective? People with visual impairments being able to engage with your PowerPoint presentation. Or are we just looking at things like, can you just give me any ideas to spruce it up? Or we need to talk about a particular subject and I don't feel I've quite hit the point. can you give me some pointers? And it'll do all of that for you. Really important to remember as well, it carries enterprise security. So the questions and the information you engage with that Copilot chat on remains secure for you. It's not going to be training any large language models or any of the horror stories of certain AI products you'll have heard out there. Highly, highly recommend that you engage with Copilot chat. Again, free for anybody with a Microsoft 365 business license. And, it's a fantastic set of tools that's available there for you, completely free of charge. And the features that it can do are just increasing by the day. So again, really, really encourage you to jump on board with that. And then next up, we're just going to be touching on some of the recent developments from Microsoft and some of the new availabilities as we lead up to our finish. So there has been some additional Microsoft 365 Copilot SKUs that have become available on there. So there is now a specific SMB Copilot SKU. Now, for those of you that don't know what Copilot is, it's basically Microsoft's AI solution, what we were just discussing on the previous page there. However, they have the free version that's built into the business applications, and they have like a full fat paid for version that brings additional features and functionality in, such as the ability to, create documents from scratch. It can become grounded in your data. So things that are in your OneDrive and SharePoint, it can use that for context and information, etc. So it just gives it the ability to be more creative and do that creative work for you as a consequence of that. Just as one feature alone that it can do, on top of a lot of automation, so automating business processes, and also creating like bespoke agents. So that would be like a chat GPT, but just for you on just a particular subject matter. It's an easier way of looking at it there. But they have created just an SMB only SKU of that, which has brought the price down by about $10, so it's about £8 per user per month, which makes it a very much more cost-effective solution for SMBs in the UK. On top of that, we've also got the Copilot bundles. Copilot bundles being basic, standard, and premium, with that Copilot piece baked into that license as well. And as a part of this new release that they've done, they have introduced some discounts and some introductory pricing as a part of that. So you can get between 25 and 35% off the business standard and the business premium with your Copilot license included there. Perfect. And these are just to name a couple of additional security and purview SKUs. So we touched on the security and the purview aspect. And again, without going into too much depth, etc. here, these are additional add-ons you can put on top of your business premium to increase the security aspect for things such as IoT devices. If you don't know what an IoT device is, imagine it being things very similar to like a Ring doorbell, for example. That would be a type of IoT device. So it's like devices that aren't a laptop or a phone and things, but they are still connected to the Wi-Fi, if that makes sense. And again, there is other pieces on there, brings in Defender for Identity to improve user protection and making sure that people can't get in through your users, increasing endpoint security with Defender for Endpoint Plan 2, more collaboration tool security, and so on and so forth, basically, increasing that overall security posture of the wider business. The Purview Suite add-on brings in additional features which are quite attractive to a lot of legal teams and HR departments, etc., more than anybody, as well as people that are in almost like governance style roles, basically. And, there is a full governance manager to make sure that businesses abide to various different legislations that they may have that are specific to their industry or specific to their job roles and so on. And it basically gives you an entire management portal that you can go in there, click on these different links and access all of this different information that's available. You've also got on here as well things like e-discovery, which allows you to, in the eventuality you have to provide what's known as a request for information. So if somebody wants all of the information back that you hold on them, you can use products like e-discovery to find that information and provide it back to those users that have requested it. Just to name a few tools there, but these are different packages that are available. A lot of feature-rich component parts in there that will, make life easier for users, but also make things a lot more secure as well. Perfect. So we have got a couple of slides here which cover off these pieces specifically. What exactly do they entail? It's very similar to what we went through with the others. Again, I'm obviously conscious of time here for us because we are coming to the end of it. But obviously, I just wanted to cover off here Microsoft Entra ID Plan 2, enhancing the endpoint security of devices, Defender for identities, improving the security of your users, how they log in, how they integrate with your systems and communicate with them. You have on there Defender for Office 365 Plan 2, which is again just enhancing the collaboration protection. So it goes beyond just emails and Teams meetings. That's bringing in OnePoint and OneDrive and SharePoint style protection as well, and doing a lot more automation work to investigate and analyze different threats. And then Defender for Cloud Apps for anybody that's using cloud-based infrastructure as well. This is where it starts looking at those sorts of security, the security aspects as well. So things like shadow IT, as it's known, which is looking at users that are potentially using systems and solutions that they shouldn't be. You may not been aware of it, but utilizing these tools, you can see, well, actually they're using a virtual computer in a different office, and we didn't know they were doing that. And is that secure? And it allows you to go away and make those necessary checks, etc. Amazing. And then if I just cover off one last piece for you all here, which is just going to be around the cybersecurity assessments piece. So when we say cybersecurity assessments, this is a Microsoft assessment done in hand with Impact. And basically it will be Microsoft running a security assessment of your environment utilizing a tool that's known as a CSAP. So they install the tool, it runs an assessment of your environment, the tool uninstalls. They'll then take that data away. We'll generate a report accordingly from that, which will basically look at some of the information you're seeing on the screen here and beyond to ensure that you have implemented all the things you should do. All your administrators have like MFA active on them. Is there any endpoint protection? Do you have any of that email security aspects? It's looking at all the bits of information like that, potentially any vulnerabilities that you may have. Very light touch, taking that information, bringing it back in a report format for you where we can go, this is what we've found. Here's the things that are good. Here's the things that are bad, but we can change it quite easily. And here's the things that you perhaps need to look at over the coming 90 days, for example. So a little bit more of a long-term project that you may want to do and engage with there. So it's really comprehensive. Again, Microsoft will do this for us alongside the Impact team. You can choose to be involved, or you can have the Impact team and Microsoft work in tandem and go away and do this for themselves. But again, free, Microsoft run it. Really, really powerful, and we're seeing a lot of SMBs in the UK that are now, taking full advantage of this.